Hello fans, we're checking Theories here, and welcome back to another Doctor Who Series 13 leak video. But as always, before we get into today's leak video, I'm just going to say, obviously I know that these could be BS, but I enjoy talking about them anyway. The reason they're called leaks is that's what they were being called when I started doing leaks on Reddit, and if that content isn't for you, then I would suggest clicking off now. But before we get into today's leak, if you could do me a teeny tiny little favour and click that subscribe button, we are trying to get to 10k by the end of the year, and I would absolutely love it if we could get there. We're on our way to 8,000 subscribers, and that is our next goal, and I would love to hit it by the end of the month. But with that said, let's get into today's leak. This one is called Not Terribly Sure What to Title This. Hi Whovians, just going to put in my 2 cents based on my involvement and understanding of the production, as well as reading between the lines. Not enormously involved with the show, but I'm a pretty huge fan of it. Particularly enjoying Tom Baker's years as a young lad on PBS and having gotten into it again when it came back with Russell shortly after I started working for the BBC. I must confess though, due to strenuous production schedules, as well as certain behind the scenes issues I've heard over the years, I'm not really sure I'd want to be involved with it fully. I've not read the other posts on this subreddit all that thoroughly, therefore I'm repeating what someone else has said. I must apologise for memory, there's a decent amount of truth in some of them, but I thought I might as well get on with the fun anyway. Here are the leaks. As I think pretty much every Whovian has speculated at this point, the so-called 3-series pact was more or less a cover for the BBC. There's been a hell of a lot of problems with Chibnall's run on Doctor Who. Initially, Moffat wasn't going to do the 2017 series of the show, but when it became apparent that Chibnall would be too busy doing Broadchurch, the BBC rehired Moffat, with a pay increase too. Capaldi was meant to go at that point too, as the BBC were interested in a fresh start with a new showrunner, as had been the custom with more modern series. Chibnall was originally set to be producing a series for autumn 2017, but when Broadchurch at ITV got delayed to spring 2017, it kind of became clear that the series was going to be postponed. The BBC were A-OK with this, as they believed Chibnall could revitalise the show. However, they started to get worried when he had to delay Series 11 from spring 2018 to autumn 2018. Initially, filming Series 11 was set to begin immediately after the filming of the 2017 special. I'm not entirely sure what the reason was, but I'm pretty sure it was to do with the casting of the companions, as well as the hiring of certain big-name talent. I think it might either be Bradley Walsh. I think it might have either been Bradley Walsh, but he was already contracted by that point, so possibly might have been Sharon D. Clarke. Also, probably worth mentioning that the BBC specifically wanted an actress for the role, so everyone on the internet who blamed Chibnall for that one are in the wrong. It's the head of drama and the controllers of BBC One who were to do with that. Actually, I'm pretty sure Olivia Colman was the actress initially offered the part, and she was considered for quite a while, which is why there was such a big gap between Capaldi's departure announcement and Jodie to reveal. However, Colman was eventually decided against, a decision that's been pretty good for her career. Frankly, Jodie was Chibnall's runner-up, although a few other actresses had been auditioned. I'd seen the tapes, and I can see why Chibnall picked her. Production ran pretty well for Series 11, but Chibnall was frustrated by BBC execs a bit, when he requested the postponement of Series 12 to early 2020 for broadcast. That is, as you might guess, Chibnall doesn't like to be rushed. Due to the ratings hit of Series 11, particularly the opener, execs were pretty tolerant of him at this point. I'm even pretty sure that one of the higher-ups suggested to Chibnall that he could do a climate change episode or two because of Versa's success. Pretty ironic decision in the long run. Eventually, Series 12 turned up, but the high-ups were a bit surprised to realise that Resolution of the Daleks was to be a New Year's special for the following year. Originally, the plan was for a New Year's special followed by a 10-episode series, rather than the opposite. However, I'll say again, Chibnall hates being rushed, and it ended up being a pretty fortuitous decision for the BBC, given the COVID situation. At this point, the series had been doing pretty well, but after the ratings declined in Series 12, execs were a bit worried, as well as a couple of production difficulties happening during the filming of the finale. In fact, the plans for the Torchwood revival, as suggested by the return of John Barrowman in episode or 2, were cancelled after he was seen as a disappointment by the BBC at large. The BBC took issue with Orphan 55 and some, although not all, of the political commentary due to some audience research finding this to be one of the major criticisms, as well as the handling of certain themes. COVID didn't really help Chibnall's situation. Initially, the BBC wanted Series 13 to air in April-June of this year, deciding to tolerate Chibnall's delays. Obviously, this didn't happen due to COVID. When they were getting out of COVID, Chibnall decided to cut the episode count down to 8. BBC were okay with this, understanding the restraints of COVID. However, they soon found out that Chibnall planned for 2 of these installments to be broadcast in 2022 rather than this year. Another bizarre thing about the series was that Barrowman was originally set to be a prominent feature of the series, but of course due to COVID this wasn't really possible, and his role was replaced by the Jacob Anderson character. Chibnall always planned for a bigger series arc this year, but I think he expected another series after this. You see, his and Jodie's contract stated they would be there for 5 years, 2018 to 2022. With all the episodes they make being broadcast about that time. I'm almost certainly that until the very beginning of this year, Chibnall was anticipating a contract extension. Not so sure about Jodie. I think the BBC liked the idea of a new Doctor every 3 series, but there is a chance he could have stayed if Chibnall stuck around. In the end, the BBC sort of gave him the boot. They weren't entirely happy with how he was running the programme, how he was handling the promotional aspect, how there'd be a pretty huge amount of problems behind the scenes. I don't think it's best for me to go into details in case of putting anyone out of work, but put it one way, Bradley Walsh was originally set to be sticking around for Series 13 until the last minute. Not that I blame Chibnall, frankly, it was nobody's finest hour. But probably most of all, Chibnall kept on disappointing the BBC with his delays. He's not exactly held a steady ship, although none of the showrunners have. The production on most of Moffat's series were hectic, particularly his third, but in spite of its runaway success, the production of the show's first revived series has become legendary within the industry, and no, I'm not referring to the presence of the 2 notorious sex pests, a vain superstar, although she was probably the most tolerable, an incredibly immature and perpetually horny man-child, an irritable and aloof leading man. These stories on that set would make your skin crawl, some of which I'm relatively sure have intermittently leaked onto the internet, but mostly being ignored. Thankfully, when David turned up, he steadied the set. If you want to thank anyone for the continued success of Doctor Who past that first series, it should be him or Moffat, whose passion for the show is immense. In spite of that, Davies could sometimes be a melancholic and depressive presence on set, but when approached, he'd light up a room. About as bad as the Moffat era got, in all fairness, was a couple of rows on set. Yes, Capaldi did have a couple of Malcolm Tucker moments, especially when a certain transphobe turned up on set, but Matt Smith could also be a divisive presence, as could Jenna Coleman, with their political opinions being ones that they'd probably rather keep private. Before you ask, all I'll say is it's the kind of opinions Twitter would hate. Not that I agree with them either. Neither of them particularly known for being reserved or well-behaved on set, quite the contrary, in fact, which never bothered me, but I know it bothered some. Anyways, Chibnall's out and so's Jodie, as you all well know, I'd think, but who's replacing them? Well, I'm not quite sure that it's 100% right of me to say, but I can tell you that it's going to be a double act this time, with one of them being pretty familiar with the show, and the other being less so. As for the next Doctor, I think he'll probably go back to being a man, but I wouldn't be shocked if they continued with an actress. I'm pretty sure the new showrunners aren't rightly certain yet. They've only been appointed recently, and there is a reason that Chibnall's run is being dragged out until the end of 2022. They want to get it at the right time. They want to get it right this time and be able to sustainably broadcast annually. With that in mind, I was pretty damn shocked to hear about Ollie Alexander's casting. It's not going to be him. At least I wouldn't expect so, mostly because the new showrunners had only just been appointed. The current plan is for broadcast in 2024. As one might guess, this could mean no anniversary special. In spite of that, there have been rumblings of possibility of David Tennant and Russell T Davies back to be involved in the 60th special. It'll probably have more than one Doctor in it, but it'll be centred on Tennant's incarnation. Just going to stop that there. So what this is suggesting is essentially a sort of dark dimension type thing where the special revolves around a past Doctor with cameos from the others, which I wouldn't be entirely opposed to, but it would kind of show the Tennant over-reliance that's been apparent recently. As for the regeneration itself, that's pretty interesting. We aren't going to see Jodie regenerate on screen. She's going to be heading off into the sunset with an arm around her companion's shoulders or something like that. This is going to be deliberate. The BBC want a new Doctor to start completely fresh, like Eccleston did. Hence the new generation remark. Don't fear though, it won't be a reboot, more a brief intermission, with the film skipping the 5 minutes of exposition that explain what went on between and why you got some new people in the title sequence. My understanding is that the double act, as I'm going to call them, are planning on making the show a little bit more macabre? I'm going to look at it. My understanding is that the double act, as I'm going to call them, are planning on making the show a little bit more macabre and a little bit more experimental than recent years, with less reliance on continuity and more psychological horror. We'll see how it goes, but I'm looking forward to it, and I suggest you be too, even if you are a fan of this era. Also, might as well add this, that BBC Wales will no longer be producing the show. Okay, so there's a couple of reasons why I don't quite buy this. Number one, it's one of those leaks that kind of says a lot without really saying anything, in that, for example, there's a part in this leak where they talk about, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to a man, but then again, I wouldn't be surprised if they cast another actress. So you see what I mean? It's kind of saying things without actually giving any concrete details, and that's what makes me think that this is just someone writing out a bunch of random stuff. The stuff about BBC Wales no longer producing the show, that's something that's been tossed about quite a bit. It was recently in that Sally Wainwright rumour presented by Councillor Geeks. And again, as I've said before, we're very proud of Doctor Who in Wales. It's one of our crowning things. So to hear that would be a massive shame if that did turn out to be true, as many places are suggesting. This does just kind of feel like a hodgepodge of other things, the multiple showrunner rumour as well, and the idea of random other on-set issues in other eras, which really wasn't that relevant to this era. So I'm not really sure why they were included. I know they called it Not Sure What to Title This, but it just felt a bit random. But let me know what you guys think about this leak. Comment down below your thoughts and subscribe if you're new, and I will see you later.